it smelled so horrible. So I drove back into the back of the garage and emptied the ashtray. And
That's great.
Isn't
You're off to a good
it
start.
fantastic?
Yeah.
Next week I'm gonna go second.
I think that's true.
Tell me
I need
your
help,
name.
but it's not on smoking.
Rolls. I call it sewer hair rolls.
Well, it was
No, what I need help out is,
Oh, you got
I need more help.
What's that?
Once you
This
get
another
it,
sewer here?
Did you get it
I'm
desired?
just back
Yeah,
to
okay.
smoking.
Well,
And what did
we
you say,
got
Rose?
cassettes.
We have some nice exciting things going on in the next few weeks, and whatever you're here for, I'll do the best I can to show you how to achieve it.
I'm here to convince you
And
that office is closed. You don't get it.
I guess the best that I can tell all of you is that you do need to have some degree of patience, because obviously whatever your habit or neurosis is that you came here with did not accumulate itself in a matter of a couple of weeks' time. And boy, can you imagine the waiting list we'd have for this class if I had this magic wand and in the next few weeks I'd have all of you magically walking out of here accomplishing your goal.
Yeah.
And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to at least give you a direction, and each and every one of you I'm sure have your own direction, and I'm going to attempt to give you that direction to be able to accomplish that goal. And as we go on, I'll show you how we can do it. Liz, are we all set? Mm-hmm. Okay. What we're going to do is we're going to attempt to just cover the hypnosis as basically as we can so that everybody understands it well. And excuse me for not recalling some of your names, but I will attempt to do the best I can as quickly as I can. Obviously, you only have one person's name to recall, and that's pretty good, you know, but I have all of you. And I love it. You know, it gives me a nice challenge in life to say, gee, are these people going to be an imprint in my mind so that I can recall who they are? And occasionally I forget, and you could understand that, I'm sure. But we'll go on. And Bob, were you going to say something? No? Okay. I saw you wiggling, and I thought maybe you were trying. Okay. We'll go on, and I'll show you how we're going to accomplish what hypnosis can actually do. Probably the main objective is to find out what hypnosis really is and what the mechanics of hypnosis might be and how we're going to approach it. And Sue, as I do some visual demonstrations here with the blackboard and draw some graphs and everything, I'll attempt to explain them, and if you have any questions, you ask me, and I'll do the best I can to demonstrate to you what I'm doing, okay?
I get a better picture than these people realize.
I would imagine you do, and I was aware of that the first week, so that's why I was just kind of going along as though you were just sitting here as the rest of us might be. But I will explain to you verbally what I'm doing as we go along. And of course, as
She
you
makes
can-
me read the menu to her.
Well, we're going to do some nice things though. As you can begin to see already, you've created some togetherness and closeness without even realizing it the first week, and we'll take it from there now, and we'll begin to understand how hypnosis operates. Basically, what hypnosis seems to be is a state of mind, as we've already discussed, that in some way causes an individual to better communicate with their subconscious mind. Some of you were at that talk I gave Wednesday, and some of you were not, so you'll have to excuse me because I'm going to have to repeat some of the things that I did do Wednesday. And if you weren't there, of course, that'll be beneficial to you. What we're going to speak of this evening is hypnosis itself, the basics of it, the mechanics of it, why it works, why it doesn't work. Probably the most important issue of hypnosis is why it does not work, because it's obvious why it does work, and that is we're communicating with the subconscious mind. Why it does not work seems to be a very important value, and that is that self-hypnosis is so easy, and it works so well, but there seems to be a level of resistance that all of a sudden gets in the way. And the level of resistance that gets in the way seems to be the subconscious mind needs the habit or neurosis, as we spoke of the first week. It needs to feel this security of a habit, such as smoking, such as eating, such as nail biting, such as some kind of a neurosis or fear. The fear protects us. The fear seems to be a protective mechanism, as we spoke of. As we speak of hypnosis in having different levels. So we'll speak of that in more detail this evening. And as you might recall, the first week I began to speak of it a little bit, and I told you that there are different levels, and we need to know what level can each of us achieve, and how do we best seem to achieve it. Can you get the word? Okay. Let's see. Is it a new tape?
It's new batteries, new tape, everything's new.
That's okay. We'll get it there. Let me see.
Oh, don't take up the class.
That's okay. Don't worry. The class doesn't mind. If they had a tape recorder that wasn't working, they'd want the same.
I'll bring mine next week.
What you have to do with this type of a tape, this is a very thin tape,
And it goes
okay?
right out again.
Is you need to rewind, fast forward. What's on the other side of this tape? Anything? Okay. You see, we're inside B here. And so I'd suggest is that you fast forward it all the way and then flip it over. That'll loosen up its tension, because when they're manufactured real tight.
So I tried to put yours on it today, but it's running now. It wasn't even running, so that's okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. There are outlets for some of you that have the tape recorders that need electricity. Yeah, I've noticed a bunch
Mine
of
don't
them back
work
there.
on batteries no more, not it's brand new, I don't know why.
You have it with you? Oh, okay. So allow me to explain further as we go along. We were speaking of what is hypnosis and how you achieve certain levels and what the levels really mean. Because each level has its own characteristic, and the characteristic of the level is very important to know, only because if you begin to realize that, gee, I see, I'm reaching a light level of hypnosis, and that means that I could accomplish this and whatever this might be. But let's start up here. Up here we have what's called an awake state of hypnosis. An awake state does not mean, again, as I had mentioned the first week, I'm sure, that you are sleeping when you hypnotize. It's a term and a jargon used. Hi, Gary. It's a term and a jargon that's used to in some way distinguish the fact that we're out of hypnosis. So awake is to be considered what we're doing presently. We're consciously aware of what's going on. We're interacting a lot. If we were to take and say we had a scale like this, and the scale had a container here and the scale had a container here, and we were to put different measurements of emotions in here or logic, and we might say that one side has all of the logic and one side has all of the emotions. The more logic we have, then the heavier would be, the less emotional structure we would have. So what we need to realize is that when you are hypnotizing yourself, as you start to go down this ladder, you're reversing the process that normally goes on. When we're younger, it seems as though what we have is we have all emotion. We have a lot of non-directional types of activities going on in our mind. We seem to have a lot of non-structured types of feelings. In other words, our feelings are hurt easier. We're not as rational. We're more sensitive about things. As we get older, we begin to accumulate more logic. Some theorize in some ways that what seems to happen is we begin to develop different parts of our brain. But let's not even speak on a physical level presently. Let's speak strictly on a psychological level and say that as we get older, we become more logical and learning more. So then we begin to simultaneously, without realizing, suppress some of our emotions because they don't seem very logical. As we spoke of the first week, it's not very logical to believe in a childhood belief, as we've mentioned, like Santa Claus or the Easter Bunny. So we begin to suppress it. But suppressing it does not in any way erase it. So the scale, it sort of gets into a balance that's comfortable for us. At least we think it's comfortable. Hypnosis begins to reverse the scale. No, it does not bring back that childhood type of feeling or belief. What it seems to do is it seems to give us the ability to consciously communicate with that child part. When we're younger, we don't have that availability. In other words, if we're told, eat everything on your plate and be healthy and strong, we accept that as being valid. We accept it as being true. When we get older, we realize it's no longer valid, but we don't have the facilities in which to erase it. So what we do is we store it in there. And every time the emotional balance drops a little bit or gets out of norm, immediately that old message comes back. Did I describe the subconscious here the first week, or was that my lecture last week? I did. Okay. So if you recall, I had said the subconscious mind might look like this, right? With that half circle and the slant lines. Did I do that the first week? No. Okay, good. We're going to have to draw a bigger diagram of that because I need to give you some descriptions. You know what I did last Wednesday. Okay. So this is an opening. This is the conscious mind here, and this conscious level here, it begins to sort of create a closure because all of the information that's stored here, and we'll go in better detail in a second, but I just need to explain something here at this point, is the instructions or the ideas that we might have as a younger person seems to be non-logical. It's not intellectualized. We don't discriminate against certain types of feelings as long as it felt good when it was said to us. If your mother comes up and says, now, if you're a good boy, you can have dessert. All of a sudden you begin to realize that that's a very positive aspect of dessert. Until when you're weighing 350 pounds later, and all of a sudden you can't stop eating desserts, and you can't understand why, but you're searching for rewards, you see. You're searching for the same kind of a stroke that you may have had put in here. Stroke meaning positive input. So now we close up this, but that doesn't remove any of that, you see. When we get upset, this opens up. When it opens up, the information immediately comes back to the surface, and when, anyways, this video is going to create a little bit of confusion for myself as well as a few people, that we're not ready for that portion yet. But anyway, when that door opens up and the information comes back out, it's not controlled always. But with hypnosis, we begin to learn how to control it, you see. To learn how to achieve the levels of hypnosis is like to learn how to drive your car. It's not a difficult procedure unless you wish not to allow yourself to express that ability of driving your car without being logical or intellectualizing. When you first learn how to drive your car, you put the key in and you turn it to the right all the way and you look in both mirrors, you put your foot on the brake in and you put it in gear and you go. Okay. But how many of us do that presently? It becomes such an automatic function we don't no longer need to, do we? We just jump in and start it and go. That's the way I wish all of you to be able to learn hypnosis. I wish you to learn hypnosis as easily as you could walk in this room and sit down. And it's that easy to learn. Nancy and Bob brought up, follow the instructions. What are the instructions? And if you recall, I mentioned it the first week, and I'm sure Diana mentioned it last week. The instructions are nothing more than to learn how to progressively relax yourself. There's a process to self-hypnosis. There's a process to different forms of meditation. The process is like the process of driving your vehicle. Maybe one driver and instructor might teach you one way. Maybe the other driving instructor might teach you another way. That's irrelevant. The idea is if you could get that vehicle from here to here, that's what's important. And that's what we need to do with the hypnosis, you understand. The hypnosis is so very, very important to learn how to achieve that level of movement, psychological movement, if you will. In other words, you're stuck in this rut right now. You're stuck in a rut of smoking, and you say, I hate these things, and subconsciously throw them in the mouth at the same time as you say, I hate it. Well, the reason you psychologically have this feeling going on is because the old message inside says you need that cigarette. You need the cigarette when you're nervous, when you're upset, when you're under stress, when you feel anxiety, when you're angry, when you're happy. When the emotions go out of norm a little bit, you require the need to stimulate yourself with the cigarette. Using that for an example, excuse me, non-smokers, but I need an example occasionally. So now what we do is we say, well, how about when I say I hate these things? Why is there this simultaneous action of throwing it in the mouth? Because as you say I hate it, you've stimulated a level of anxiety to the subconscious mind that you might not be able to have it. If you attempt to quit smoking on a conscious level, you begin to find that your mind becomes preoccupied with the idea of smoking. If you attempt to lose weight by dieting, you find all of a sudden you crave more of the foods that you're not supposed to have. But if in some way you could go inside that subconscious mind, and in some way go inside the subconscious mind and actually reach out and sort of be able to feel it, and that's a good way of expressing it. I feel strongly that if you could feel a sensation to communicate with the subconscious mind, then you're going to understand it better. If I stand up here for the next few weeks and I just speak and I tell you a whole bunch of things and all you do is hear me and all you do is go through the motions of what I explain or teach you, then I don't think we're going to have much of an accomplishment because you haven't taken a conscious part of you and attempted to make the commitment of being able to feel the subconscious mind. There is a feeling, you know. Are you aware of that feeling, all of you? Are you aware of the feeling when you're out of control on your eating and you wish you could stop and you reach for another potato chip? What does it feel like?
Anxiety.
Feel
So
like-
anxiety. And I'm not a big smoker. I'm a big eater. But I
Yeah.
smoked also and I quit. And when I had this 3 relatives sick not long ago, I started smoking again. And when I smoked, I notice now with people that do smoke, I'd smoke just like I eat. One cigarette after the other. So that's the way I notice, that's the way I must be eating, if that's the way I'm smoking.
So what does anxiety feel like?
Well, your whole body is nervous and tense and
Is there
like
an
it's-
energy? Is there an energy there?
Oh yeah, it's a nervous energy. Well, you get a nervous energy, that's what you get.
See,
you
we're
know.
describing it as a nervous energy, but the subconscious mind could also have a very lethargic energy. It could have a powerful energy, see, an angry
Well,
energy.
When I get the anxiety and stuff like that, I eat things I don't even like. I go in the refrigerator, I don't care if you just keep eating and stuffing your face, you know, and then when I'm calm, like if I practice my self-hypnosis at home, then you're real calm like, and it does work if you practice.
Okay, so the calmness is to be the reverse of the anxiety. Presently, we're calling the subconscious mind the anxiety, but obviously it's not just anxiety. I want you to be able to actually feel the subconscious mind as easily as you could come up and you could feel a person. If you could feel Ralph's arm like that, then I want you to be able to feel your subconscious mind like that. There is no such thing, of course, in our entity that we can describe and draw a picture of, but we can pretend that we know what it feels like by the description that you just heard from Lorraine, or any of you people here might describe your own feelings. There's a subjective feeling that seems to occur whenever in some way we're not quite in the norm. Let's erase the scale for a second. Let me show you something else. When we're going along, emotionally speaking, there's a kind of a wavy line, you know, just like right now as you sit here in your chair and you're listening to me, your emotions are just kind of wavering along. The craving or the urge for a cigarette from a smoker, or the desire to want a snack or eat excessively from a person who eats too much, is only when this emotional line here drops, or in some ways might elevate. When it drops like that, the first thing we seem to do is we seem to want to in some way bring it back up. See, so let's assume that we get depressed and it drops down. And when that emotional level drops down, immediately we don't feel quite right. The subconscious mind is lacking something. It feels like it can't reach out. It feels like it's lost. A person who instructed me quite a bit in the areas of hypnosis has expressed to me it feels like it's dead. That's an interesting statement to make, that the subconscious mind feels like it's dead or dying. So what's going to bring it back to life? A stimulus. What the stimulus could be? Stimulus could be lighting a cigarette. The stimulus could be reaching for something to eat. The stimulus could be a headache. The stimulus could be not falling asleep at night. Whatever that stimulus might be, we interpret it consciously as a neurosis, as a habit. So now we deal with it on a conscious level as though it's something bad. But here's a subconscious level thinking it's something good. It's protective. If the subconscious mind has a sensation that drops like this, and the only thing it needs to do to elevate it is take a Valium or light a cigarette, then you can begin to see what it does. Well, actually, this blackboard is not large enough to be able to express to you what it begins to do as the years go on. But if you were to visualize in a miniature scale that it goes like this and it drops down, and then we light a cigarette and it comes back up, drops down again and we eat and it comes back up, you begin to see that what goes on in the period of life is that each time it's dropping down, it's actually way out of norm compared to where it may have started. So maybe the description of what I'm attempting to draw here is beginning to say that when our emotions go out of norm, the stimulus that might be needed is according to each of our own decision. Again, you know, I seem to elaborate on a whole lot of different habits, because obviously when I do a group such as yourself, I have 30 different types of ideas of what is needed to bring that subconscious mind back up to an elevated, controlled feeling.
You have all four of them.
Well, maybe not.
Oh, I do.
Yeah.
Eat, cigarettes,
Yeah, formally.
you can't sleep.
Can't sleep, but obviously we attack them at one level at a
Yeah,
time. But we need to treat it as a real positive issue. You never hear me say anything negative about eating excessively, or about smoking, or about nail biting, or even about headaches. I need to speak on a positive level, because I'm not attempting to speak to you people on a conscious level. You realize very strongly what you need to do consciously, don't you? Sure you do. You know that you need to do accomplishments of different types, but subconsciously. That's why if you notice, I choose my words carefully. I attempt to interact as much as I can with each of you. I attempt to allow you to open yourselves up a little bit so I can begin to understand you better and what we're going to accomplish. Because you could sit here and have somebody consciously lecture to you, and I don't really feel you're going to accomplish as much. At least that's my particular perception. And if you feel any differently, then of course you begin to find all of a sudden you're accomplishing much more than you realize. It's real easy to pick up a book and say, here's how you improve. The book is a guideline class. The book is a way of finding a direction, but it's not your direction necessarily, you see. It's only a particular direction that shows you how possibly this is accomplished. But again, I guess we're all different, aren't we? So as we begin to realize we're all different, then why do we need to in some way group ourselves? You often hear, the best way to quit smoking is, no, it's not for you. I might help you in some way find out how to find out what's the best way for you, but I can't tell you. you see. The only thing I could do is in some way direct you. So as I do this, attempt to follow with me. And please interact, and please interrupt, and please indicate if you don't understand, or you don't agree, or you want more of a certain area. Realize myself in this particular position up here, attempting to draw a few graphics and describe to you what I'm attempting to put here. Dee?
So far, what I'm understanding is that the subconscious mind is in essence your emotions.
Yes, that's a good way to say it too.
Is that right?
Yes. That would be the way I'd describe it, because the conscious mind is your logic, we'll say. Realize you might pick up a book such as one of these and it might say the subconscious mind is something else. I've read in books the subconscious mind is your soul. I've read in the books that subconscious mind is your creativity. Well, whatever it might be, for the purpose of this class, I need to make a scale and say the conscious mind is your logic, the subconscious mind is your emotion. If your emotions are out of control, then your subconscious mind is out of control. If your emotions are out of control, to put it back into control is where these particular habits come about, such as smoking or eating or nervousness or anxiety. Pardon?
Or anger.
Isn't that funny? I was just sitting there thinking the same thing. I have such a tendency to react so quickly in a childish manner if I feel that I've been put down. So that I am reacting as a child would, don't pick on me sort of thing. And anger is very good.
The need to bring out that child part of you is so very, very important to the subconscious mind because we've suppressed it for so many years. So when the anger attacks you, normally the rational, logical part says, no, wait a minute, cool it, Nita, just kind of calm down. But the child part of you squirms and squirms to get out and shoots out like that. That's where we begin to lose our control. Now the self-hypnosis does nothing more. You know, everybody seems to think of hypnotizing yourself and saying, I will not eat. It doesn't work like this. It's hypnotizing yourself to be able to bring the subconscious mind to the surface when it's not crazy or angry or upset. In other words, why only bring it out when you're upset? That's what we're saying. Self-hypnosis is a controlled way of bringing it out when we're not upset, to be able to communicate to it, to educate it, realize again, whatever our society or our level of conditioning may have been religiously or in some other way, that we might find that we were taught this is right or this is wrong. We were taught to eat everything on our plate, or we were taught to not show our anger. Maybe we were taught to express our anger in a hostile way. Many, many times you find we react like our parents. I mean, that's the way we're taught, huh? Many, many times, and you hear of abused children. You find out that their parents were abused children as well. Well, if their parents know nothing else, then they need to act in that same way until they learn something else. So the subconscious mind only knows this. If Nita's being put down, it pushes and it pushes, and all of a sudden it flares out. And when this anger flares out, that's where all of a sudden we lose the control. So again, now we learn self-hypnosis, or whatever we might call it. And when we learn self-hypnosis, we communicate with it, not so much again for the fact of taking and saying to it and educating it directly, but for the purpose of bringing it out, lowering that stress level. You see, that stress level is always going on inside of us, and we're not able to do anything. We say to ourselves, I'm going to quit smoking, and the stress level says, no, I have an urge for a cigarette. But if we could bring it out, relax it, calm it down, now when the urge to have a cigarette occurs, we have more of an availability of saying, I don't have a need for it. I don't have a reason to pick up that cigarette. In other words, if you've noticed, some of you have been in hypnosis a little bit longer than others, you've noticed if you do self-hypnosis, let's say at 9 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, somebody cuts you off on the expressway, it doesn't affect you in the same irrational way, because you've calmed down that subconscious mind, you've relaxed it, you've communicated with it. In other words, you've brought up this little dip here in a more controlled fashion without the stimulus of a cigarette or a eating or a nail biting or whatever it may have been. Again, you could understand my need here is to give you many, many descriptions of what I'm attempting to say so that it fits many, many people in this room. Some of you might sit there and say, what is he speaking about? And others might immediately say, oh yeah, I get it. Like Dee just said, as she interpreted that the subconscious mind is the emotions. Yeah, that's what I was attempting to express, wasn't it? So now, all of a sudden, some of you might begin to realize that what I'm saying here is that the subconscious mind is relaxed, it's calmed down, but more than that, it's brought out and communicated with. How do we bring it out? by achieving different levels of hypnosis. The deeper we go, the more we bring out. It's a very important issue to understand. Here's how we're going to say it. If, as an example, in this wake state that we speak of, we are susceptible, in fact, excuse me, we are susceptible to the point of being able to communicate. We have that availability as long as we're calm. Attempt to lose weight or quit smoking when you're nervous. Doesn't seem to work as well. Today I was speaking to somebody and he said he had a friend who had quit smoking for 10 years. And when he had first quit smoking, he had this availability to just go hours and hours without thinking of a cigarette. But then as the time had gone on, he had become aware of the fact that almost every minute that he was awake, he was thinking of a cigarette, 10 years later. The reason is that what he was attempting to do is he was closing the gap negatively. In other words, he initially started out well, but he lost his control as he went along. We all have the availability of controlling ourselves at certain times. If you notice, you do real well on your diet. You're doing super. Don't even crave the foods or sweets you're not supposed to have. Your husband comes home late and all of a sudden you get hungry. Why is it that him coming home late, or whatever the example might be, would trigger this need or this habit or this neuroses? The reason seems to be obvious that what seems to go on is that when the husband comes home late, or when you are in this near traffic accident, or when you're upset about something, the need to reach that stimulus to bring us back to normal is very, very important. The example I just gave you with this individual. As the pressures of his life went on, obviously, from the description that I was given, he began to feel the need again closer together, and all of a sudden he's expressing verbally that every minute of his waking day he's thinking of a cigarette. Well, remember I had mentioned to you about the law of reverse effect, and I said the law of reverse effect says the harder we try, the behinder we get. That's like if I say to you, don't think of an elephant, and you think of an elephant. And then as I begin to reinforce the fact of don't, it gets stronger and stronger and stronger. So you begin to see the combination of the stress, the subconscious being out of control, attempting to be in some way reversing what you're going to do, seems to cause a lot of failure. But if we could calm down the subconscious mind, re-educate it, and one important thing we don't allow in our society, give ourselves permission to fail. We don't need to think of the elephant or whatever the particular example might be. We just don't allow ourselves to fail, though. We're conditioned, no, we're conditioned to be positive, we're conditioned to be perfect, and there's no such thing as perfection. And when we begin to realize there's no such thing as perfection, yeah, we call ourselves perfectionists, and we can say that's perfect, and it's a manner of speech. But obviously there's always a level of imperfection in any level of life that we might attempt to find or achieve. If we could be aware of that ahead of time, if we can in some way begin to understand that we don't need to be perfect, we're going to have much more success. So I guess I might add at this point, class, that as I begin to teach you how to achieve hypnosis, bear in mind a lot of the things that I've begun to speak of, especially in the areas of being able to communicate with the subconscious mind with hypnosis. That's so very, very important to communicate with the subconscious mind. Okay? We go into different levels of hypnosis, and I'm going to describe them for you. Again, if you have questions as we go along, please express that question or that idea. The first level of hypnosis that we have is called a light level of hypnosis. It's also called a hypnoidal. And this light level of hypnosis, or this hypnoidal level, and maybe you don't need a lot of these technical facts, but you might need some idea or description of hypnosis, and this is the best I know how to do it, is that this light level of hypnosis is not much different than you are feeling present. If you were to close your eyes right now and just let yourself relax for a second, that would probably be how the light level of hypnosis would feel. The difference being that in a light level of hypnosis, there's a certain level of anxiety that begins to form. Does anybody seem to know why? What would you assume so far from what I said, why there's a certain level of anxiety that begins to form when you achieve a light level? Carrie?
You're losing control, possibly.
Yeah. What are you doing? How are you losing control, Carrie?
I don't really think I do. I'm just saying it might be,
Yeah,
but I've
you're
never really
accurate.
experienced it.
Why does anybody think we're going to... Chuck?
I would, my feeling would be just the opposite of that. I want to go all the way down.
Yeah.
You know, like Wednesday, when we were at the auditorium, I was really, I was kind of upset that we had to
To end it.
end it.
Yeah,
I was
because we were
very
really getting there,
comfortable.
weren't we?
Yeah, well, half an hour. That was pretty nice.
Yeah,
I had a nice time. I was just kind of laying back there.
Yeah, and
Relaxing.
obviously you can begin to realize what I had said. We did
Right.
an induction in the auditorium last week for some of you who weren't there. That was about 25 minutes long, and it seemed like it was just 5 minutes long. And I began to express that I think hypnosis needs to be longer because it seems like 25 minutes is not nearly enough sometimes. But Chuck, realize what I just brought up and what Carrie said. Why would the person feel anxiety in a light level of hypnosis?
Well, yeah, control. But I want to experience it.
Yeah.
You know, as deep as I can go. You know,
Yeah.
for that particular. And then if it's control, then I want to be able to control it.
Yeah.
If that's what the situation is.
And when we go through our induction tonight class, what we're going to do is we're going to stop at each level so I can begin to express to you, now here's what's going on, here's what you're feeling, and here's why you're feeling it. But the anxiety that we speak of, the anxiety that Carrie just mentioned, or that lack of control, and Chuck, you mentioned the opposite. Yeah, I want to go deeper. Yeah, but first we need to go through this threshold, and many people seem to go down this level, and all of a sudden there's all kinds of little stress levels being felt. Well, the best I could explain it as a description is it's like being mentally undressed, okay? If we were to mentally expose you in some way, you can begin to see the discomforts you might feel. Our clothing become our conscious mind, okay? And the more neurotic we become, the more tightly we become dressed, and the more clothing we begin to wear. The colder we are outside, the more clothing we wear. The hood, the scarf, the gloves, the boots, and everything else. Well, the more neurotic, using that for an analogy, the more upset we become with ourselves, the more our conscious mind begins to protect that subconscious. Now visualize if the extreme was to be a scale or a measurement of 1 to 10, and 10 means that it's real cold outside and you wear an awful lot of clothing. And 2 means that you're running around in your bikini. And 0 or 1 would be that you're undressed, okay? Well, then begin to visualize that with hypnosis, you are taking the individual who has a lot of sensitivities going on inside that are extremely suppressed, and they're at a 10, and you're undressing them. You're exposing them. So that level of resistance begins to show. Remember I mentioned when we first started this evening, why doesn't hypnosis work? You know, if in fact it's so great. Well, one of the reasons would be is because as we start to accomplish it, we say, hey, wait a minute. Oh, no, you don't. Oh, no, you're not going to take off my protection. Because remember what I had said, the subconscious mind needs all that level of protection. And the conscious mind is serving a purpose. It's protecting rationally. So nobody can come along and say, if you're not good, right, Santa Claus is not going to bring it. You know, everybody's going to say, oh, this guy nuts. But obviously that rationale, that logical part of the brain begins to interfere or filter or in some way block any irrational suggestions. I like to mention like this. Hypnosis is not very logical. It's not very rational. None of you here, including myself, could prove to me that hypnosis exists. Nancy's got the best opinion here. That is, she's skeptical. The rest of us have expressed interest or curiosity or acceptance. But the skepticism obviously is the best part, because who could prove it? You could have your hands stuck together, you could bark like a dog or forget your name, but doesn't mean you were hypnotized, huh? To this day, in my knowledge, understanding of it, there's no way of proving a person is hypnotized. But the assumption is that hypnosis is a very subjective term to communicate with your subconscious mind. But in fact, if there is a level of resistance that's going to be found, the level of resistance is in rationale or logic, you see. The less logical we are about accomplishing our goal, probably, and excuse me if I'm incorrect, and probably the more success we're going to have. Does anybody know why that's true? Let's take the goal of achievement of losing weight. Why is it important to not use any logic in losing weight? Barry, you have a thought on that? Why is it I'm saying, Barry, that hypnosis is not very rational, it's not very logical, and why am I saying also that it's not you can't accomplish a goal like, say, quitting smoking or losing weight with logic or rationale?
Well, you've been in it a lot longer than us, so you have the answers.
Yeah, I guess I need to ask you questions though, so you interact. we could obviously have walls up between us, and then none of us will interact at all, and I could just sit and speak to the microphone and the camera, and then I'll have all the answers. But I guess I'm trying to draw all of you out. Carrie, you wish to answer?
It seems like it's just because your subconscious mind reacts more like a child. So I guess when you're under hypnosis, you have to kind of relate more as if you were to be talking to a child.
That's good. What else about a habit?
Is it
You don't
would
put a
be?
wall up?
Huh?